Guitar tips, just the tips, just for you. Guitar tips. Hello and welcome to Guitar Tips. My name is Adam Levy. This is my weekly video blog series. I post a new tip here each and every Friday. And you can subscribe if you like. There is a red button down. Just always I'm pointing kind of random. I point at my shoes. You can subscribe to my shoes if you want to. Or you can subscribe to Guitar Tips. Somewhere down there is a red button that says subscribe. I'm sure you will find it because guitar tippers are smart people. They are internet savvy people. They are people for the new millennium and for millennia to come. So hit that red button and you will be a subscribed tipper. It's easy to do. I hope that you will. This week's guitar tip is sponsored by Martin Guitar Strings. Those are the strings right here on my guitar. I am using the Retro series. I don't know what that chord has to do with anything. I just kind of grabbed it. But they feel good. They sound good. They play in tune. They last. I dig them. Martin Guitar Strings Retro series. Thank you so much. The tip. On with the tip. Here it is. You ready? Okay. Books are still cool. That's right, kids. Books are still cool. A lot of what I know about the guitar, I learned from books. And so I just wanted to talk about a few of those books here because people do ask me to recommend books. And of course, what I would recommend depends on where you're at. So I'm going to talk about a few books that might be helpful for players at different levels and of different interests. And I hope that you will seek out the ones that seem like they might be interesting for you. I'm going to start with the book. I had this book when I was probably 14 years old and just trying to figure some stuff out. It's called Basic Blues for Guitar by Fred Sokolow. It's basically a book of blues vocabulary in a lot of different styles of blues. Folk blues, country blues, rock blues, jazz blues. There's some stuff about playing rhythm guitar. It's just tons and tons of little examples that could go a long way and open up your playing. I'm sure that I still play licks today that I got out of this book. So thank you, Fred Sokolow. When I had it as a kid, I think it came either with a floppy record or maybe a cassette. I can't quite recall. These days, I think it says CD included. I'm not even sure if it's still in print, but I'm sure you could find it. If you want to build up your blues vocabulary, it's a really good book, very accessible to players of any level. Okay, let's see. You want to learn to read. Oh, I dropped my snark. This is a good book if you want to learn to read. It's called A Modern Method for Guitar. It's by William Levitt, or Bill Levitt, I think, as people tend to know him if you went to Berkeley. It's published by Berkeley, the music school. There's 3 volumes of it. It's progressive, meaning it starts at the beginning and just keeps moving on. So it's a really good, basic, get started guitar book. It's not just about reading, but of course, you have to read to play all this music. There's no tab. Sometimes there's fingerings indicated. And a lot of stuff is based in certain positions, so you can figure out what you're supposed to do, but there's not the typical tab that you see in a lot of guitar books. So that's why I recommend it as a reading book, even though it doesn't say this book will teach you how to read. Okay, this is volume 1. There are 3 volumes. Here's a book that I got tons out of a little bit later, in my mid-20s, late 20s. This is not a book for beginners. It happened to come to me at the exact time when I needed this book. I'd already been playing a lot of the kind of typical jazz things, and I was ready for some new ideas. I'd been listening to a lot of records out of New York and New England. I was still living I think I was still living in Northern California when I got into this book, in the Berkeley area. Not Berkeley School of Music, Berkeley, city of Berkeley. And I was getting into all these like ECM records and listening to John Abercrombie, and I had no idea what was going on. This book helped me figure out some of the stuff I was hearing. It also is great for just mapping out the neck. The first couple chapters is just about how to visualize music on the fretboard. So it's a very practical book, and at the same time a somewhat esoteric book. He gets into all kinds of stuff that's not the typical jazz approach to things. But lots of cool ideas on voice leading, lots of just little, towards the back of the book, there's a couple of pages of just like one sentence at a time, just little stuff to think about, which now that I think about it, may have sparked in some way me doing guitar tips. I never thought about that before, but I think there's some truth in that. Anyway, The Advancing Guitarist, Mick Goodrick, fantastic book. This is a book by my friend Lainey Stern. It's called Composing and Compositions. Notice it's not called, hey, take a guitar solo, or it's not called, here's a bunch of chord voicings for you. It's about composing. And I think that's actually a great way to learn about music and about the guitar, is by studying tunes and writing tunes. So it's a relatively thin book, not thin in terms of the content, but just, she doesn't go on and on like some people. Each chapter is kind of a concept and then a tune using that concept, one of Lainey's tunes, of which there's some really great songs in here. So I would recommend it if you're interested in writing instrumental music, or even in writing non-instrumental music from just a really creative point of view. And along the way, you will learn more about music and about the guitar and stay inspired. It's a very, the energy of the book is very positive. I like that. Do you know what I mean? Some books feel heavy, some books feel light. This book has a lot of lightness. This book is kind of heavy. Speaking of heavy books. This is, it's by George Van Epps, who was a fantastic guitar player, mostly 7-string, not in the corn sort of 7-string, but in the jazz guitar 7-string way. I would really recommend that you check him out as a player. This book is hard. I have to be honest. I have kind of a love-hate relationship. I pick it up every couple of years, and I think I'm going to get into it now. It's quite challenging. It's a lot of material, a lot of pages that look like this, because it's very thorough. So there's a lot of nitty-gritty. There's not a lot left to the imagination. He breaks it all down, lots of different keys, lots of different fingerings. It takes a while to get into it, and as I said, I'm still not thoroughly into it. I've been sipping this Kool-Aid for a lot of years. I have not thoroughly drunk a big gulp of this Kool-Aid, but I think that it is worth it, if only because he plays so great. So there must be something going on. I get impatient. I guess that's what it is. There's a thinner, by the way, there's a thinner George Van Eps book that you might want to check out. I can't remember the title of it, but if you look around on the internet, you're sure to find it. And that might be a good place to start if you're curious about the Van Eps stuff, but are put off by something that's as thick as a telephone book. Do you guys even know what telephone books are? If you're a kid, you might not. Anyway, George Van Eps, he is something to be reckoned with. A book that I don't have handy that I also wanted to recommend, I wanted to have the books that I'm talking about here, but a really cool book. Mickey Baker wrote a book about jazz chords that's very accessible. It just shows you the kind of no-nonsense, here's the chords that you need to know, like if you've got a jazz gig this weekend and you're already pretty good at blues and rock and whatever, but you just don't know anything about, you know, these kind of chords, or, you know, those kind of chords. He will lay it all out for you. There's lots of progressions to practice and stuff to work on. It's just really accessible and a great book, if that's where you're at. This is a book by my friend Wayne Krantz. It's called An Improviser's OS. Very different point of view on how to think about the guitar, how to think about improvisation. He doesn't talk about scales. He talks about formulae, whatever. It's really about setting limits, so that instead of trying to connect all the dots on the guitar and play all over the place all the time, it's about, okay, what if you just blocked out, you know, say this much of the guitar and limited yourself to just a few notes within that area? How much music could you make with limitations? Which, of course, ultimately leads to more creativity and more... I think I've said this in other tips, but you know, what Wayne's onto in this book is something I really believe in, which is, you know, put up some fences and really see what you can get at within a very limited area. There's a lot to be discovered in that realm. So this is a good book for that. There's no licks in this book. If you're looking for cool licks to play, they're not, this is not the book to start with, though I think it will lead you to playing some cool licks. He just doesn't spell them out for you. You have to, it's a very DIY kind of book. Another book I wanted to mention, again, I don't have it handy because I left it at my school, is what happened. I know just where it is. It's not here at home. It's called Modern Chord Progressions. It's by Ted Green. If you're interested in jazz chords and you're beyond the Mickey Baker book, get Modern Chord Progressions and just start at the beginning and work your way through it. It's just beautiful. Lots and lots, thousands, probably tens of thousands of little short examples that will help you understand voice leading and harmonic progressions and substitution. It's just a fantastic book. The last book I want to mention is the most recent book, most recent in terms of when it was published. I think it came out last year in 2014 or 15, and also the most recent book in my collection of guitar books. It's pretty heavy. I don't mean, well, I mean, it's sort of medium heavy this way, but it's conceptually heavy. Don't be fooled by the title. It is fundamentals in a way, but it's not like the Bill Levitt, Modern Method Volume 1. It's not that kind of fundamental where you start at square one. I think you should know something about the guitar before you dig into fundamentals, but once you do, there's tons and tons of great ways of thinking about how to organize pitch, intervals, and the relationship between different kinds of notes and shapes. It's It's a very visual book. It looks at music. It's not a lot of dots, in the music staff, but just kind of diagrams and just ways of visualizing music. It's pretty cool. And then, there's some great exercises about picking technique and becoming more efficient. And he uses he's adapted some drum rudiments. I don't know if you guys know what drum rudiments are, but that's what drummers practice their sticking patterns with. He's adapted some of that to the guitar. It's really interesting. I think it stands alone as a cool book. But all of these books do, in their way, stand alone, and that's why I recommend them. I know that there's a lot of other guitar books in the world that I haven't talked about, so if I haven't mentioned your all-time favorite guitar book, let me know what it is. Write in the comments down below. You can tell me books that have helped you. I'm kind of curious to know what other books people really love, because if you just go to, I don't know, Amazon or whatever and Google, guitar book, there's a whole lot out there, and it's pretty hard to sift through all of them. So I'd be curious to know which books have helped you, and specifically how they've helped you, and at what times in your development they've helped you. So that's a wrap. We're wrapping this one up. Books are still cool. That's the tip this week. Books are still cool. So thank you, tippers. Thanks especially to the subscribers. You know who you are. I'm Adam Levy here in Los Angeles, California. Stay tuned and take good